election this year is crucial for the people of Michigan. You know, I'm running for governor because I love this state and I am proud to be a Michigander. But I'm looking around at the Michigan that my daughters are growing up in, that your kids are growing up in, that your grandkids are growing up in. And it hardly resembles the Michigan of my pride, you know, what I'm thinking about when I talk about my pride. Because there was a point in time where people came to Michigan to become a part of the middle class. Because we had organized labor that created a real middle class, and it started right here in Michigan. People packed up their families living in Alabama or Tennessee or Kentucky or halfway around the world in the Middle East, came to the state of Michigan for a good paying job that paid you well enough you could raise your family up and retire with dignity here. You knew that no matter what community you called home, your children were going to go to a phenomenal public school. You knew that when you traveled the roads, you were going to be safe on them. And when you turned on the tap, it was going to be safe to bathe your kids and give them a glass of water for dinner table.
In a state that's been devastated by the water crisis in Flint during current Governor Snyder's administration.
That makes it so nice, really nice.
It's a job.
Yeah, well, I want to thank them for letting me grab some water from their place, because literally I'm going to start drinking this at home at work. Literally I'm going to start drinking this at home at work. Literally I'm going to start drinking this at home at work.
Get the fuck out of here! Biatch!
In the state where the city of Detroit went bankrupt, where public schools in both Flint and Detroit, and Pontiac and Saginaw, and all throughout the great state of Michigan are going under, and the quality of education is not good in our public schools for the most at-risk kids.
Have you seen the really bad schools? Maybe try to figure out what they're doing?
I have not intentionally visited schools that are underperforming.
Maybe you should.
Maybe I should. Maybe I should. Maybe I should. Maybe I should. Maybe I should.
You mean to say that's the best you can do?
Because of the state that this governor and the Republican administration has left the state in. A state that ranks absolutely worst in terms of road quality and the roads that we drive on here in the great state of Michigan. They're falling apart. They're crumbling. It's the worst infrastructure and roads in all 50 states. And so it's for these reasons and for many, many more reasons why I'm supporting Gretchen Whitmer to be the next governor of the great state of Michigan. Now, as DJ Yacoral has told you guys, both him and I had the pleasure of serving the people of the great state of Michigan back around 2008-ish to 2009-ish in the Michigan State Senate. And while we were down there in Lansing working at that time, the Republicans also controlled the state Senate that we worked in. And our Senate minority leader at that time was Gretchen Whitmer from East Lansing, Michigan. And at a time when Republicans were basically doing whatever they wanted to do, and which is like now, both nationally and here in the state of Michigan, she was a strong voice for the people of the state of Michigan. She stood up when they wanted to shut the Capitol down and they didn't want to let folks, general people like you and I, come in. She stood up for working class families. She's been standing up for working class families since all the way back when she was a prosecutor for Ingham County. And it's for those reasons that I also support her. But let me talk about the biggest reason. The biggest reason is because she's a friend of labor. And as you know, I'm a big union guy, job steward for my local 6,000 Michigan state employees. And at a time when unions are being attacked and the results of those attacks are basically a war on the middle class to annihilate the middle class, it's time that we stood up as middle class people, as working class people, and as the poor, and we let our voices be heard. It's time that we put somebody in office who will actually listen to our voices. It's time that we have somebody in there that's going to fight to keep what's left of the middle class still here. It's time that we had somebody in office who understands both the business side and how it helps businesses, and also how it helps general families in the state of Michigan and all throughout the country to support organized labor. Now, as you can see behind me, the UAW sign, which I have up in the studio proudly. And also behind me, you probably can't see it as well on one of our foam soundproofing things, is the Gretchen Whitmer for Governor sticker. You probably might have to zoom in to see that, but that's a sticker that I just got from an event rally that I just came from with her, where she spoke about these very things. She spoke about the roads. She spoke about the crumbling middle class. She spoke about how labor built this state, which in turn built this country. She talked about how under Governor Snyder's reign of terror, as we'll call it, that there's been a lot of broken promises and a lot of things didn't get done that he promised to get done. She also talked about how we've seen what the effects of these emergency managers are in cities like Flint and cities like Detroit. She talked about the water crisis here in the great city of Flint, you know, the city that put the world on wheels. She talked about the rights of clean water and how people have an expectation to be able to bathe their children, to be able to cook the water, to be able to send your kids to schools where they can actually learn instead of sending them to schools where there's potential that they might get shot and killed. Or, worse yet, they might wind up being raped or some type of gang violence, which is what goes on in the public schools of today because we don't support our teachers. So we need somebody who's going to stand up for the working class people. We need somebody who's going to stand up for the unions, who's going to stand up for the teachers, who's going to stand up, most importantly, for our children. We talk a lot about how the children are the future. People have been saying that for decades. Well, I don't hear anybody saying that very often anymore, but it's true. And if it is true, then you need to fund the programs that are going to help our children. You need to fund the programs that are going to increase education all the way from secondary education to higher learning in college. You need to make it affordable for them, and you need to make sure that they have the job opportunities that they need once they get this education. And that's something that Gretchen Whitmer will do as governor. She's not only a friend to labor, she's a friend to the average person in the state of Michigan, which means who? You and I. So that's why we need to hit the polls like we did in 2008 for Obama. You know, with President Trump and the disaster that presidency's been, and also the disaster that you've seen here in the state of Michigan with Governor Snyder, I think it's pretty clear now what happens when you try to take a big business mongrel and try to turn them into a political leader. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Just doesn't work. What we need is real grassroots leadership. We need the type of person who's been there and done that, who understands the plight of the middle class, who understands what it's like to have to get your kids ready for school in the morning and also make sure you have everything you need for work, who understands what it's like to sit up worrying about how you're going to pay that next bill, or how you're going to put your kids through college, or how your kids are going to be learning at school today, if they're even going to be learning anything. We need somebody who understands the division needs to stop. We need somebody who understands what it was like in the heyday when labor and management worked together. You take General Motors, you take Ford Motor Company, any of the big three, and you look at the production during the time when the union was strong, and when labor and management were coexisting to form a better company. Because let's just get something straight. A lot of you out there don't realize this, but labor is not against the company because the company is providing our members jobs. And in my case, the state of Michigan is providing my people in my local jobs with the state. So we're not against government. We're not against companies. But we do have an expectation of working together for the greater good of all the citizens of the state of Michigan. And that's something that Gretchen Whitmer shares. It's something that she's been fighting for her entire career. And it's something that she'll continue to fight for as the next governor of the great state of Michigan. So tell all your friends, tell the people that you don't know, tell people that you haven't talked to forever, and tell your enemies for that matter, because this state cannot sustain itself under even 2 more years of this current Republican nonsense leadership or lack thereof. We need to build these roads to standards that people can actually drive the cars that are still being made here, the ones that are still being made here that haven't been outsourced. People have an expectation to be able to drive on the roads, is how the next governor put it, and have an expectation that they can go from point A to point B with their family, and their family's going to be safe. And you all out here, if you're from the state, you know, or if you visited the state and driven down these roads, you know, some of these potholes are like craters, and it's ridiculous because we had a lotto where money was supposed to be going to the roads. We had all these other things where this money was supposed to be going to the roads. But in the last 8 years under this leadership in both the House and the Senate and the governor's mansion, obviously that money hasn't went to the roads because they haven't gotten better, they haven't increased. This is something that Gretchen will make sure happens because she wants to make sure that all our families are safe. She also wants to make sure that all our families' children are getting the best education possible, and quite frankly, that's not happening right now. I talk to a lot of teachers. I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and a lot of these teachers are saying that it's almost like they might as well be working in Jackson Prison or any of the other prisons throughout the state of Michigan that are under the Michigan Department of Corrections, the MDOC, because that's basically the extent of what our public schools have amounted to over the last 10 years. You had the bankruptcy of Detroit. You know what Detroit public schools look like. The city of Flint, there's barely any public schools open anymore. They closed most of their doors and turned them all to charter schools. So the question is, are we going to continue to see the middle class shrink? Are we going to continue to have this failed leadership, these tax breaks for the ultra-rich 1% like Bernie Sanders talked about? Are we going to continue to have our jobs shipped overseas? Are we going to continue this assault on the working families and labor unions? Because that's exactly what it is with these right-to-work laws. You know, they pulled that crap with the governor over there in Wisconsin, and then it trickled down through the Midwest. And here in Detroit and Flint, where the UAW was founded, where basically organized labor comes from, where basically during the time that labor was strong here in the state of Michigan, we not only put the state on the map, but we put the whole country on the map, and we put the whole country on wheels too, for that matter, obviously with the auto industry here. But people were able to provide a good life for their families. They worked hard, and they were proud to be employees of the Big Three. They were proud to be employees of the manufacturing parts plants that made parts or did work for the Big Three. They were proud to be teachers. They were proud to be state employees. Everybody was proud to work here in the state of Michigan when labor unions were flourishing and strong and labor and management worked together. So it's not that difficult. You know, it's called collective bargaining for a reason, hence the collective part, because it's something that does good for all of us. It does good for the working families in the state, and it also keeps a happy and sustainable workforce for the companies that employ these people. And that's something that Gretchen Whitmer understands. And I got a feeling that Doug Schuette, who's running for governor, the current attorney general, doesn't understand, because he's cut from the same cloth as the DeVosses, as Snyder, and as the idiot at 1600 Pennsylvania right now, Donald Trump. They're all rich billionaires who could care less about anybody else or about making America great again, as Trump says, or in Snyder's case, you know, all these jobs were supposed to come to the state of Michigan. He was going to put Michigan back on its feet, working again, fix the economy. Well, all we've seen is more school closings, the water crisis in Flint, Detroit going bankrupt, and the roads getting increasingly worse and worse and worse. That is why the time is now. That is why we have to come out and vote. Get your friends to vote. Everybody you know, get them out to the polls and support Gretchen Whitmer for governor. A proven leader who, when she was minority leader in the state Senate when we worked there, fought Republicans tooth and nail on right to work, fought them tooth and nail when they wanted to cut education, fought them tooth and nail when they wanted to do away with Medicaid for the kids and for the elder. She's been a fighter for the citizens of the state of Michigan for a long time now. It is time to put her in that top spot where she can really make a difference as the next governor of the great state of Michigan. I'm Jay Maz for the Good Riddance Podcast, and if nothing else, make sure that you get out and vote Gretchen Whitmer for governor in 2018. Now, the primaries are in August. The general election will be in November. And if you have any questions, email us. We can answer them for you. We can even tell you where you need to go to vote in terms of your polls. If you're not registered, get registered. We can help with that as well. Get at us, but most importantly, get out and vote Gretchen Whitmer for governor. Peace. And good riddance.